City Times Sound presents the Community Nights Roundtable, a chance for students of San Diego City College to engage with community members, college staff, and fellow students to discuss topics that matter to us all.
Welcome to the Knights Community Roundtable with voices from across our community that matter. I'm your host, Anh-Thu Ngo, and we have a great guest today, Sheba Najmi, who is a new adjunct faculty of product design here at City College. Beyond that, Sheba is a leader in civic technology and has an extensive background in user experience, or UX, and product, with many years at places like Yahoo and LinkedIn. And we'll hear much more about that in a moment. Thank you, Sheba, for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Delighted to be here.
So let's start off with product design. What is it, and how did you get into the field?
Yeah, so product design, when you think about design is about solving problems fundamentally for specific users. And in the context of user experience design, well, product design is a process with which designers blend user needs with business goals so that they create products that will be successful out there in the real world, and they'll address both the business's goals and the user needs. Mm-hmm. And the way I got into product design was, it wasn't linear. When I first started, I was in medical school, and then I was a math major. At some point, math got very abstract. The higher up you go, it gets into group theory and field theory. And I was sort of like, no, that wasn't the stuff I enjoyed that much. And I was looking for something that would combine the humanities with the sciences, because I appreciated both very, very much. And so I discovered a multidisciplinary program, which I was really lucky to discover. It was called Symbolic Systems, and this was at Stanford University. And it was computer science, philosophy, psychology, and linguistics. Mm-hmm. So computer science and cognitive science. So you study the way human beings think and the way computer systems think, and how we all manipulate symbols to create meaning. And this was fascinating to me, and people focused in a lot of different areas, such as artificial intelligence, which back then was a pipe dream, and natural language processing, or human rationality, or cognitive neuroscience. And I focused in human-computer interaction because I wanted to make the interaction for people, regular people, with technology, which was, an up-and-coming new thing at that time, to make it really intuitive and easy and seamless, especially when I thought about people that were older, like my mother, who had never used a computer before. Mm-hmm. And from human-computer interaction, my first job was at Yahoo after grad school, doing interaction design. And ultimately, the field changed. We used to have separate interaction design and visual design, and design prototyping and user experience research. These were all separate fields. And then ultimately, the industry shifted so that it combined interaction design and visual design into product design. And we also started to incorporate a lot more product thinking into it, which is a process of thinking not just about your user and the design and the user's needs, but also the business goals, so that the product that you create is really viable and it's out there. So product designers today, all of these companies you can think of, Google, Yahoo, LinkedIn, any of these, or any software that you might use, there's typically a product designer involved who's turning these broad ideas and concepts into really usable, valuable, feasible, viable, well-executed products. And that's what I'm teaching here at San Diego City College.
So you make our lives easier, in short.
A good product designer does. So yes, yeah. I would hope so.
So we've known each other for a little bit, and I actually didn't know that about your background, that you started out in medicine and math. So it's really cool that you got a chance to pivot and found this really interdisciplinary way of combining your talents.
Yeah, I was also a news anchor for a TV station at one point. So I've had a few different careers, and I went the product management route as well. Mm-hmm. But there was always a desire to do something that helps people. And I think a lot of us who get into user experience design, we enter into that field because we have empathy. And, empathy is sort of like the first stage in the design process. And we want to make things better for people. And that's how I got into it.
Mm-hmm. And so now here you're passing on your skills and knowledge to students at City College. What does the class look like, and what can students expect to learn?
Yeah, so the class takes all the students through what it is the product design process entails. And so starting with the design thinking process, which is those 5 canonical steps of empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test, to layering on top of that, things like looking at the market trends and business goals and technology feasibility, adding all of those layers onto it so you're doing a competitive analysis, but really going deep into understanding user needs and problems so that whatever it is that the solution that they come up with addresses those. And so the class actually takes them through creating a project, an end-to-end project that is actually going to be viable out there in the world. Just the design of it, obviously, we create a prototype at the end of it, which is a clickable prototype. And it's a piece that they can put into their graphic design portfolios and their user experience design portfolios. I actually teach a couple of classes here. One is, they're all in the interaction design track. One of them is interaction design 2. The other is interaction design 4.
Great. And since you've been here, I guess, for about a year, right?
It will be a year in December, yeah.
Okay. Have you kept in touch with some of the former students? Have they given you some feedback?
Yes, it's always such a delight to me. Some of my former students, I saw them at San Diego Design Week. They were there going to every single event and volunteering, and they've graduated and they're looking for jobs now. And they stay in touch. They sent me an update recently saying how the job hunt was going, and I try to refer them, to if I see any opportunities that work for them. From what I hear, they got a lot out of the class that they took last semester, which was Interaction Design 4, which was product design at a sort of like an upper level.
Mm-hmm. Great. And so this mention of San Diego Design Week, why were you there? What is it?
Yeah, so San Diego is, I don't know how many of you know this, but San Diego this year has a very, very special place in design history. And it's because San Diego Tijuana, the binational region, has been designated as the World Design Capital for 2024. It's a pretty big deal because it's the first time a North American city or region has gotten this designation. And as a result of this designation, that means that this entire year, there are a number of design-related activities that are free to the public and open. And you can just go to the World Design Capital website and see every day there is something, an exhibit or an art installation or a talk or, a workshop that you can attend. And then one of these focused activities was an annual event that has been happening in San Diego for a few years called San Diego Design Week. Tijuana Design Week happened earlier in April, and now just I think last week was the end of San Diego Design Week, where there were a ton of talks and workshops and exhibits and gatherings, networking opportunities. And I was involved in 4 of those. I gave 2 different talks on 3 occasions. One talk was done twice. The first one was at the Nissan Design America space, which is a beautiful space. So they were the hosts, and it was held by San Diego Experience Design, and they were interviewing me. Mm-hmm. And it was an interview/talk, and the title was Designing for Inclusion, Civic Solutions for All. And what the talk was about was how each of us as designers, and when I say designers at this point, I mean everybody, because all of us are creating something or other, how each of us can, whether we're researchers or writers or, actual product designers or community organizers, how we can contribute to making our communities better and to making public services work for everybody using the skills that we have. Because the skills that we have as designers can apply. You can use them, to work in the private sector. You can use them to work in the public sector. And I have worked in both. Mm-hmm. And so I talked about both of those things, what the differences are, what the similarities are, and how folks can get involved. And a lot of people seemed to be really inspired and say, okay, how do I get started? Tell me. And so we had a list of resources curated for them as to, organizations that are in the San Diego region where people can get involved and get started. The second talk was called Breaking Barriers of Mobility to Include Women in Civic Tech. And this was about the work specifically that my nonprofit organization, which is called Tech for Change, which is based here in San Diego as a 501c3 nonprofit, whose first initiative has been Code for Pakistan. And now its second initiative is Code for All, which is a global network of these civic tech organizations. But this talk was specifically about the work that Code for Pakistan has been doing to enable women to, become an active participant in certain regions, in parts of the country, in certain provinces. Women don't have access to a lot of the things that we take for granted. And so how, we run an internship program as well as a fellowship program to enable a lot of these people both to improve their skills, but also get involved in civic tech themselves. And then there were two instances of that talk. And then the last was a design trek, which was an event that had speed mentoring. And it was organized by Sida Eves. And there were a number of us folks that were acting as mentors in different topics like user experience research or AI or things related to design. And it was this in pairs as mentors, we would mentor whoever had questions and sort of answer their questions for them.
Wow, it sounds like you had a really busy week.
It was a busy week. But it was really inspiring to see. There were so many talks there. It was just wonderful soaking in and absorbing of ideas.
Mm-hmm. So a very full experience. Around what time of year do we have this Design Week?
So Design Week is usually in September. Mm-hmm. And, so around that time of year is when it happens in San Diego.
Okay, so listeners can look forward to the next one next year. Okay.
Yeah.
So you talked about Code for Pakistan. To give listeners some context, you're the founder and executive director of that organization. That's a nonprofit that drives citizen-focused technology innovation and civic engagement across various urban areas in the country of Pakistan. Tell us a little bit more about civic tech. That's a phrase that you brought up.
Yeah, so the way I describe the civic tech need is that if you think about our daily lives, right? Like our private sector lives. We have things like Google Maps on our phone. We have mobile banking on our phone today. Even on our smart watches, you can, get notifications. Like everything, services come to you where you are. But these are all private sector services. And if it comes to the government, even here in the United States, you still have to stand in line at the DMV. So any kind of public sector services tend to not be where the private sector is. And so that creates a gap, both in terms of our expectations as citizens, that government is ever going to meet our needs where we are in the same way that the private sector does, which fundamentally that gap becomes dangerous. It leads to an erosion of trust of government. It leads to an erosion of democratic values, right? Mm-hmm. But also, the gap is two-sided. Citizens don't want to engage with government, especially in places like Pakistan, because they see it as corrupt and bureaucratic and inefficient. Mm-hmm. And on the other side, government doesn't want to engage with citizens because they think that all citizens do is complain. And the government has its legacy way of doing things, and it's perfectly happy doing things that way. But that's just not a way to move forward smartly today, right? When that gap between what we're used to in our daily lives from, our regular services in the private sector and government just keeps getting left far and far behind. The public sector there's such a big disconnect there. And so to bridge that gap, that has to come from us, from people like you and me and our listeners, people that we have access to a way of thinking and technical skills and design skills that are not generally present in government. And we need to bring those skills to bear in order to bridge that gap. It has to come from us working together with government to show what's possible. Mm-hmm. And so civic tech is this idea of you see a problem in your community, you work to fix it. You are empowered as a citizen to fix it. You we can do more than just use our voices to complain, and we can do more than protesting, and we can do more than writing a letter and even voting. We can actually now, thanks to technology and now thanks to open source technology and all of that, we can actually create solutions ourselves, create public services ourselves.
Mm-hmm. So how do we get the government's attention if we're engaged in this whole process of product design, human-centered design? How do we get what we create to the attention of officials and have them adopt those things?
Yeah, so I would say actually it's a couple of different things. One is you want to start in tandem with the government if possible, right? So there are a number of things, like I was a Code for America fellow, and we already had a partnership with the government. Because if you create a solution and then go to the government with a final solution and say, hey, I created this final solution, chances are you've missed out on understanding a lot of things about like how the back-end system works or why there's certain constraints here. So your solution won't be able to be adopted just as is. So you need to work with them from the outset in order to understand their side of how things are working so that your solution can be plugged into that and also get their buy-in and bring them along as stakeholders throughout. Mm-hmm. Secondly, you can sometimes create solutions that don't need the government. So, for example, in your community, if in my community I notice that my neighbors don't know when the trash is picked up, I can find the data. There's so open data, which is the government can publish the data. I can probably find it on a website or some government site that says trash pickup in this neighborhood is at this time and this time and this time, right? I could send out like an alert to my neighbors every day. I mean, that's a civic hack, as we call it. Or you could put up flyers. It doesn't even have to be technology. Civic tech is really about the process that we follow, not so much about the technology. And so the process is more about being really, really human-centered, citizen-centered in how you create things. It's really about using the design thinking process that we already use as designers and applying that to the problem at hand, which is a community problem or a public problem. And so everything, all of our skills can really work very well in government. It's just that the stakes are higher in government because government has to, your users now are citizens, right? So you have to design for a whole variety of people who may be experiencing homelessness or who may not have a smartphone or who may be a senior citizen or who may have limited internet access or who may have a range of disabilities, right? You have to think about everyone versus in the private sector, you can just design for an ideal customer. And then what's at stake is a lot higher, like compared to your online shopping not showing up on time, it's your life is at stake if the fire engine doesn't show up on time and you have a fire, right? Which means that even more so, we need designers. We need people like us, technologists, designers in public sector services because, and anything that you would do, one of my students who actually attended my talk at San Diego Design Week said that the stakes are so high that she's worried about making a mistake. And I said, well, actually, anything you do would be a step up from what is happening today, which is not following a human-centered design process at all. So you would be making things better. So, I would worry about that much, much later.
So it sounds like you're making a push for crowdsourcing community creativity. And I hope that leaves our listeners inspired to partake in some of these conversations and even put their skills to use for their community. Again, we so appreciate your time, Sheba. You are truly a Renaissance woman, being a teacher, a mentor, a community galvanizer. And it's always illuminating to hear about what our faculty are up to and what they're doing beyond the classroom. So thank you.
It's such a pleasure to be here, and I am so excited for San Diego City College students in particular to go out and do amazing things in this world that will have real impact on people's lives.
And I'm Anh-Thu Ngo. This was another edition of the Knights Community Roundtable, where we bring you conversations that express our community. Tune in next time for more.
The Knights Community Roundtable is brought to you by the students of City Times Sound, a partner of City Times Media. CTM is award-winning, student-produced TV and digital news programming, magazine, radio podcast, and indie film, all on one platform at San Diego City College. City Times Media offers hand-on experience for students using new and emerging technologies in state-of-the-art facilities. To learn more, please visit sdcitytimes.com.